Yes, so uh, yes, we're live now, Anand.
Yes.
So good morning, and thank you so much for agreeing at such short notice to be on this interview. I welcome you to Ekansh Trust. We've spoken
Thank you.
before, but
Yes.
we haven't really engaged in a conversation like this. I have always appreciated your work, Anand, and I think I need to thank Amir Khan for introducing you uh, to the world for the work that you do. Can you just tell me in brief what exactly you do and what Samyak does?
Okay, well, I head an organization called Samyak, which is a communication and resource center on gender, masculinities, health, and development. And it has various functions. And one of the key functions which is relevant to this particular workshop is our work with men and boys, sensitizing them to make them understand how they are socialized in a particular way and how they are not biologically wired to be men from Mars. So something like that. I basically help various organizations to design strategies to communicate with men in a non-threatening way, where they won't really get threatened because of the language of equality, but they would start feeling more attracted towards the idea of equality and caregiving. So that's what I one of the responsibilities I do in Samir.
Yes, this is what Aparna, who works with Ekansh, has also been telling me.
Okay.
We have been wanting to take your help, even to reach out to people who are from the underprivileged section of society, because there also there is a big need, and that is, I think, where you work basically at the grassroots level
True.
to
Yeah.
sensitize men and boys there. So I had shared with you the video of mothers talking about how caregiving has become entirely almost entirely their responsibility now during the lockdown. So, beginning from the household chores to
Yeah.
their jobs, if they are working, to taking care of the child, it all seems to have descended upon them and their shoulders.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to know your take, because of course everybody has their own opinion, but I want to know from your point of view, why is it that we find that when it comes to most of the NGOs, of the schools, the teachers, the educational institutes, why is it that there are more women and men are less represented there? What do you think uh, the reason is?
I'm sure that, of course, the very first, very clear answer is the issues around gender and gender stereotyping around the jobs and gender stereotyping about the work and kind of work. So that is the clear answer. But what does it mean? There is this whole politics of language here. When it is very important to communicate terminology, but at the same time, it is very important to also communicate the meaning of that terminology. So when we say gender, it is part of gender system. People really need to understand that biologically we are born as human beings. Either we are born as male child or a female child with vagina and or intersex children, but we are socialized in a particular way, and that particular way is basically decided by a particular society. Or I mean, because when I'm saying particular society, that means that there are different kind of societies and there are different kind of cultures. So these young, I mean, newborn male children or newborn male women, for the time being, we do not talk about intersex, but male children or female children or sons or daughters are socialized in a particular way, and that is the terminology which is called gender socialization, which means they are socialized in a particular way to behave in a particular way, to perform particular kind of jobs, to look in a particular way, to carry themselves in a particular way, to perform themselves in a particular way that society and culture expect them to be. For instance, if we see that, both male and female children are born with short hair, uh, but as they grow up, society and cultures expect boys to have shorter hairs and women to have longer hair. Whereas biology is that, if someone want to really grow hair longs, it actually can be this way. So that is what biology is. So basically, societal expectations and cultural expectations from men and women are different, and they are literally pushed into these different boxes, what we call it as gender boxes. And that is why we see that men are pushed into so-called productive jobs, productive work, and women are pushed into so-called caregiving jobs. Now, when I say pushed, it is literally pushing. For instance, mechanicals are not really born, right? Men are trained to become mechanics, whereas a chapati roller is not really born biologically. He's trained to be a chapati maker. And likewise, caregiving, education, etc., and especially, if you see, it is part of the system also, isn't it? I mean, for instance, we have Anganwadi workers, women. We don't have men Anganwadi workers. Entire of the nation, we were looking for a man to it was one of the United Nations research project to interview 20 men who are doing non-traditional jobs. So those were male dancers who are doing Bharatanatyam, and men who are in nursing, nursing as a care, healthcare. We were talking to men who are working under female tailor boss, so tailoring, because the cutting is the job that is considered to be very prime in the tailoring business, right? So male trailers, who were working under female bosses, men who are taking prime responsibility of cooking in their home, not, I mean, it's a prime, I mean, absolute responsibility. And we also were looking for a man who is running a nursery school, kindergarten. We didn't get any single man running a kindergarten. So one really need to really understand. So running a kindergarten is not a biological virtue, but taking care and running a kindergarten is been where women are largely pushed into. So that explains why there are more women into caregiving business, entire caregiving business in a way, and why there are very less men into caregiving, including nursing, except Kerala, because where it is accepted more as a medical nursing as a profession. So so we hardly found any. There are male nurses even in Maharashtra, but they are called brothers, they are not nurses. They're called brothers in hospitals and not nurses. So that basically explains the kind of stereotyping that has been created by societies and cultures. And you will find it in different societies and different cultures, different kind of stereotyping happened about gender norms and gender roles. And probably that answers our question why there are no men into education and caregiving. I can't hear you. Possibly you
I'm
might.
sorry, I had muted myself. Is it also because men are largely seen as the providers, and that if they are getting paid to cook, they would be chefs in hotels, etc. But when it comes to the house, making the humble chapati for the wife, or frying some papads for the family, might be looked down upon because there is no, it's not, they're not earning anything through that. Is it because they're also seen as providers, and women are seen as more nurturing and caring than men? Of course, it's been a stereotype, and we've all read about it. How do you think we can break this, and how do you think we should see it now in 2020, where we have unit families, and the mother really, when a man goes out to work, again speaking very generally, of the stereotype, when you go out to work, there is a team that works with a man. Like if he's a manager, then he has his teammates and he has his staff. There are people who are helping him out. Whereas the woman also used to have that earlier, where there was a mother-in-law and the sister-in-law, and there was an entire family working with her in the house. But now she's all alone, typically. And sometimes she's also going out and working. So she's not even at home 24/7 like she used to be earlier. So that whole presence of the woman in the household seems to be, a lot different now than it used to be earlier. So how, I mean, can you shed some light on this?
Yeah, I was just taking notes so that to respond to. You're so right. When men work in the outside spaces, they also have team, and then women work home. When they work in home, they are almost all alone, except certain kind of help that urban male possibly provide, and not as a responsibility, but as a kind of so-called help in domestic chores. So that is one thing. But even if a woman is a manager, she will also, and that is why I'm saying it is a system. A woman is a manager, she also will have a team, but she has to pretend herself as a man to manage the team. Or she might have to get into these male attires, that kind of clothing, to be a manager within a kind of corporate sector, to manage a particular kind of team. So gender stereotyping here is that to manage a team, you have to have that masculine characters, you know, and that is why even a woman might have a team at the workplace, but at the moment she gets out of that male attire and role of managing team and gets home, she is then becomes the kind of sole single individual to manage the kind of or to provide those kind of services. So that dynamic one really need to understand. And that is why we say that gender operates as a system. The feminist scholarship across the world and women's rights movements and women who are trying to help both men and women to live their lives optimally as human beings with their rights have gave us a kind of analysis of something called productive work and something called considered as reproductive work. Whereas productive work is considered as the work of earning money or producing something and contributing to the national wealth, for instance. And reproductive work is supposed to be providing care, all kind of care and reproducing babies and nurturing them and taking care of that, etc. I would like to shift for a moment because you referred to Amir Khan's show. On the same show where I was part of the show, Kamla Basinji, who is a very senior feminist activist who is based in Delhi, one could really Google and listen to her ideas. That would be really helpful. So, for explaining these productive and reproductive jobs, that we started discussing, she used something in Hindi, something like this. I'm not quoting, but I'm just trying to reproduce what she said. उन्होंने कहा, and that's why I'm shifting in Hindi. उन्होंने कहा कि मर्द जो बहुत कमा के लाता है, वो अगर कमाने जाता है तो मतलब एक तरह से वो रिप्रोडक्टिव काम करता है, वो कमाने का काम करता है. तो वो मान लो कोई अफसर है, कोई एग्जीक्यूटिव है, कोई लोग है, तो जो काम से वापस आते हैं घर पे तो वो कहते हैं कि आई एम डेड टायर्ड. या मराठीत लोग मतलब मेलो आज काम करो, मर गया आज मैं, बहुत काम किया. क्योंकि बहुत काम किया है ना, नेशनल वेल्थ बढ़ाई है, प्रोडक्शन किया हुआ है. तो जो ये मरा हुआ है उसको जिंदा करना है अगले दिन फिर प्रोडक्शन के लिए. तो उसको जिंदा करने के लिए औरत उसको खाना खिलाएगी, उससे प्यार करेगी, उसके पैर दबाएगी, उसके जूते दूसरे दिन पॉलिश करेगी, उसको नाश्ता खिलाएगी. वो वहां से पीट के आया है, मतलब उसका सेल्फ जो है वर्थ मालिक ने चिल्ला चिल्ला के शायद नीचे किया होगा, तो उसको अपना पति दे कह के उसको सम्मान दे के उसको फिर से खड़ा करेगी उसका वजूद, और फिर वो दूसरे दिन काम पे जाएगा. वो एग्जीक्यूटिव या लेबर जो भी कामगार है वो दूसरे दिन काम पे जाएगा. तो ये जो मरा हुआ आदमी को जिंदा करने का जो काम है ना, दैट इज व्हाट इज नॉट वैल्यूड, क्योंकि वो अपने आप तो मरा हुआ जिंदा होके नहीं गया हुआ है, तो उसको जिंदा करने के लिए औरतों की उसके पीछे काफी सारे काम हैं. तो वो कहती हैं, एंड दैट वहां पे नहीं कहती है, बट दैट एक्सप्लेन्स द एंटायर रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन समथिंग कॉल्ड प्रोडक्टिव वर्क एंड समथिंग कॉल्ड रिप्रोडक्टिव वर्क, वेयर प्रोडक्टिव वर्क इज वैल्यूड मोर but reproductive work is not valued. It is not valued, and that is why discrimination starts. So assignment of any kind of value to anything is the beginning of discrimination. And I repeat, assigning a value to a particular anything, it could be work, it could be this t-shirt, it could be something else. For instance, I'm wearing blue and you are wearing red, that is just the difference. But if I say the blue is best than red, I am assigning value to the blue, and that becomes the basis of discrimination because it is valued more. When we say that men who cook outside is more valued and that is why they get paid, but the same value is not given to the cooking as a job, not given back in home. So basically we need to understand that the differential value which is assigned to different kind of jobs and different kind of work is leading to discrimination. And where there is no value assigned by society and by culture, okay, and that is again a gender. So by society and by culture and by system like family, the value is not provided to the job. Those jobs men won't get into because they are trained into getting into valued jobs. So if it is valued outside, they'll be good cook and chefs and 5-star chefs and making TV shows. But if they are not, if the same job is not valued within the family system, in the societies and cultures, they won't get into undervalued or zero valued work. So we need to basically create value to the domestic work. And they then possibly, then I'm saying possibly, even understanding this, my contribution to domestic chores is not that great. I mean, in that sense. So it is again, they need to be trained into getting into that. And for instance, I'm not trained rolling chapatis, but I'm not, but I trained myself during my hostel days some 30 years back. I had to, I was responsible to do subjis, to do kind of curries and etc. I'm still continuing with that. I was not trained into rolling chapatis, but I never even made efforts to roll chapatis. So I think that it is not a biological virtue, that you have to make conscious efforts to get into that. And same likewise, I think men, if they want to get into caregiving, either they need to train by something, at the same time they also need to be willing to get into caregiving roles.
I completely agree with a lot of things you said, because my chapatis are also not the greatest. My curries are. But what I notice more and more is that as we are getting more elitist, and girls are also going out and doing fantastic courses and different streams that lead them to great jobs, they also
Yeah.
seem to think that cooking, with of course we have people delivering food at home nowadays. We have Zomato and everybody else. So a lot of wives, I won't say housewives anymore, a lot of wives, a lot of girls who are living in hostels, the whole trend that used to be there earlier, ki ladki hai to khana banana to aayega, it was a given, right? I think I
Mm-hmm.
broke that mold when I was growing up. So did
Mm-hmm.
Aparna to a great extent, whom you know well from Ekant. So most of the people watching us are also the so-called rebels, where we didn't really
Mm-hmm.
learn to cook while growing up. We thought that an education was more important. So I find that women are trying more and more to become like men, like you said, wearing those clothes.
I'm sorry, I'm cutting.
No worries. Wearing those clothes, developing that attitude. And when we become a little assertive or aggressive, we are immediately called bossy. And bossy, a boss can typically only be a man, right? I mean, how dare you even try to be bossy? The woman can't be the boss. That is again a given.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we hear a lot of even the language. So terminology and disability we have where you don't use certain terms. So again, when it comes to the gender space, I think there are a lot of terms that need to sort of get phased out, and new terms have to start coming in. Where when you say about value, it is not only about money. It can't just be material value, because when someone goes away, what you remember is not the things that they have bought for you. Even if you think of our own parents, it is typically what your mother made for you, what she cooked for you, that you remember, or the games that your father played with you, or the things that your father said to you, or the time when he sat next to you holding your hand, that you remember when they're gone. So can we redefine the whole value system that we have today in families, especially since we are smaller families now, and there is nobody to turn to, with all these therapists and everybody around? A lot of the mothers are going to be breaking down over this lockdown period because of the burdens. How do we rework the value system quickly, do you think, to help us now?
Well, I think there is no very quick fixing of such kind of issues, certainly. But if I would talk to men who are living with disabled children, you know, I would certainly bring in the some kind of theory of some called Dr. Stephen Botkin, who is a psycho-emotional educationalist, Dr. Stephen Botkin, and he came with this model of male socialization, as he says. But the model is basically child socialization, where he used touch as the medium to connect and to feel secure. For those who are vulnerable in different sense, not just disability. He's not talking about disability, but I'm just trying to adopt it, and possibly might really help, because the vulnerability in certain societies like South Asian societies, we feel much safer when we are in touch with human beings. I mean physical touch. So vulnerable children, if they are disconnected from physical touch, certainly feel very, very vulnerable and powerless, and then possibly start hating. So that basically creates a kind of crack in the kind of relationship, emotional crack in the relationships. What he suggests is that basically making sure that through words. In say in northern parts of the globe, it is more of the words to make sure that you are connected. Someone like father talking to a child and saying, I hear you, what you say, that is not South Asian. मैं सुन रहा हूँ, तो हमारे यहाँ लोग कहेंगे सुन क्या रहे हो, करो ना कुछ, because doing is more, as you said, doing is more South Asian connection rather than just I hear you and using words. That is more in the West and more in the global North. For global South, including African region, if you say, including Southern America, including South Asia, Southeast Asia, touch is very, very important. And I think that can be broken through men learning how to how to create that feeling of security and safety in vulnerable, whoever vulnerable is, through non-harming and safe touch with children. That possibly might help, because that is, our men are not really taught to do that. And that is why, even if you see in the child care, in child socialization, they will be basically holding the child, but the moment child does any shushu and so they will just hand it over to women, saying that she is the cleaner, because that is seva, no, that is cervix. So even, and that is such celebrated, that's such a caring father, look at this, but the caring father actually avoids the responsibility when it actually comes to serving the responsibility. So I feel that, and slowly, even in South Asian region in general, I'm not sure about parents living with disability, but in our masculinities theorization, we have read and we have observed and we have researched, where we see that that kind of physical touch actually starts disappearing as the child grows, as the child, the son gets 10-year-old and or 12-year-old. There is minimal physical touch between father and the children. 18-year out of question. There are hardly very few young men who hug their fathers. I usually ask this question to men in my workshops. Remember when did you hug your father last? And they actually don't remember when they, but that's not the case with mothers, because as caregiver, she had invested so much into that caregiving. That investment is the emotional connection. Whereas men need to really understand that if you don't invest into caregiving, there is an emotional crack in the relation. There will be a relation of father-daughter or father-son, but that might not have the same intensity of emotions uh, 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 if you would have rather invested into kind of caregiving. So I think men getting into caregiving is high time. I mean, they need to really understand. We need to make our messages simple and non-threatening, saying that unless we say that, well, it is your responsibility, why don't you take this responsibility? That is a blaming kind of message or blaming kind of communication. Rather, if we change the entire politics of language and say strategically, okay, strategically, I'm just suggesting strategically, it's not necessary, but as you're saying, what could be the strategy? Strategy could be changing the language, and we say possibly our son would be very happy if you take care of him, rather than saying, why don't you do that? Because they're not trained. They, as you say, they are clueless. They have never thought something like this. Let me give you an example. I was doing this kind of training with cricket coaches in Mumbai, and there was this 65-year-old cricket coach who was teaching with the Mumbai Cricket Association. And after having this almost 10 or 12 training sessions on gender, 65-year-old, okay, he came and he said, he almost was in tears, and he said that, यार 35 साल पहले जिंदगी में आती तो जिंदगी कुछ अलग होती, which means उसने कहा कि I'm 65 and no one actually spoke to me, which means there need to be spaces to talk to men. I mean, and strategic communication with them. I'm not saying that let us not celebrate their victimhood. Make them understand their privileges and the cost they pay for using those patriarchal privileges. It is not about oh poor men. It is not about that. It is about, oh man, you have those privileges, but look at what you are losing, at what cost you are using your patriarchal privileges. at the cost of losing relationships, emotions. You know, they being better human beings. You know, they lose on that. They lose on that. It is sad.
So many things that you say bring back so many memories because my father was a very reserved man.
Mm.
He made the best round chapatis for us. There was no ego there. But when it came to being physical, if I went to give him a hug on his birthday, he would sort of, suddenly
It's just
withdraw.
back.
Yeah. So it's like, daughter, keep your distance kind of a thing was always something, especially in South India, you find a lot of it. I think also in Maharashtrian society, those hugs
Even
don't
Maharashtra.
naturally, even to me, even today, it is something that I have to make an effort towards, to get physical with people because keep your distance was something that we were taught growing up.
But
Um,
that's respect. That's respect. You know,
that was
that's
considered
respect. You know.
you touch the feet, but you can't give a hug. So yeah, I think we need to rework that for sure. Um, Another fear I think that men have now, especially with the whole Me Too movement and all of that, is should we actually step forward and
Mm.
get, you know, what will be seen as correct and what will be seen as wrong. So the whole good touch, bad touch
Mm.
thing has also gone out of control, I think, to a great extent. I had put up an incident on
Mm.
Facebook that happened with me. We were in that in the bus at the airport that takes you from the aircraft to the terminal, and there was this little 5 or 6 year old girl, obviously from the US, Indian child from the US, and because she had the accent, and she was, she climbed up right straight into the bus where you have the little step in the back seat, and the bus was moving, it was heaving back and forth, and the men who were standing there automatically moved forward to stop her from falling, and her mother was standing closer to the door from where she entered, and this girl says, "Ma, they're touching me and I don't like it," loudly at the top of her voice. And those men were so taken aback because all they were doing was instinctively reacting to prevent that child from falling. So, culturally, also, there seem to be so many differences where we are not able to tell, um, again, good touch from bad touch. There have been cases, Aparna works, with the Anganwadis, and she came back with a horrifying story where there is this girl with mental and physical challenges who is on bed all the time,
Mm.
bedridden, so to say. So all of her bodily functions obviously are on the bed, whether it is the toileting, and she's post puberty, so all of that also is on the bed. And her father just told Aparna that I don't want this girl in my house. मुझे ये लड़की नहीं चाहिए, इसको ले जाओ please. There are many cases like this of even mothers who have become physically challenged, elderly women who have to crawl to the toilet because the toilets are not accessible and they don't have a wheelchair or crutches to take them there in the slums. So the condition is really bad. Um, how do you think we can begin to speak to men uh, who are from that kind of a background where there is no academic education, so to say, and not too much exposure? So when you and I are talking
Mm.
about these things, you just have to state it, and I know where you're coming from. And most of the people who are watching us on Facebook also understand exactly what you're trying to say. We're able to relate to it because there are similarities in our background, and we have been exposed to a lot of
Mm.
things. But what about those
Mm.
people who are in spaces where they have simply, that is where you work. So I want to know,
Mm.
what can we say when we go out there to these fathers about their daughters? Number one, the woman is also overwhelmed with the responsibility of having given birth to a child with a disability. While we can talk to
Mm.
the more educated women and tell them it has nothing to do with karma or fate or your, what you did wrong or sins. I'm sure it exists even in the better elitist society. I mean, the more
Yeah.
educated society, but especially in the slums and the undereducated or the underprivileged class. How do we help them?
I mean, thank you for bringing this up because, and that's why when I said the conversation started with the touch as one of the medium of giving care uh, uh, to vulnerable individuals. But that is not the only aspect of caregiving, and we possibly need to think of expanding our canvas of the idea of care. You know, it is not just about providing medicines or nursing uh, an individual, but that care, that the idea of care has to be really expanded, and that expansion need to be really discussed with men. You know, what could be the ways that you think care can be given. Most of them would say that I will provide money. You know, I'll provide fees for the institution. I'll provide fees for the center, and that is caregiving to me. But I guess beyond that, there are psycho-emotional needs, and if they are available at that moment, um, I am unequipped to comment on caregiving in disability part, but I certainly see that men expressing their care through I would say getting involved, engaged into studies of children, or trying to help train the skill of putting up these covers to their books, so they're getting involved into these activities of children, possibly also need to be considered as uh, the giving care and the companionship, because you need not always to have a nurse with you, it's also just being there for them, around when they need the most. Identifying, trying and observing the patterns of emotions and behaviors children shows, and defining caregiving in that particular case, because there cannot be a blueprint that we generally think about caregiving, isn't it? So there could be 10,000 other ideas of caregiving, theoretically or in practice by institutions, organizations, NGOs, etc. But particular child possibly might need a particular kind of uh, care, and that can be only observed through engagement with children, observing their patterns when they feel vulnerable, when they feel insecure, and just being there and assuring them that I am there in this kind of particular kind of situation. If touch is required, possibly provide that kind of hug. If touch is not required and some kind of help is required, providing that kind of help. I guess, yeah, I mean, I'm not a behavioral scientist, but I could imagine through my understanding of care, and which I regret in case of my son, but my parenting with my daughter was different than because with my son is now 19, you know when he was child, uh, and my engagement with his caregiving role was minimal, but it was so different for my daughter, who is now studying in 6th class. So because I regretted a lot not being part of caregiving in his life, and I consciously then was part of caregiving in my daughter's life, who is now 10. So I guess men need to also train themselves, observe, reflect more uh, on what are they losing. We need to train them to reflect on what are they losing by you becoming so kind of provider, only providing father, and just providing money or support, I mean financial or material needs is not caregiving. Human caregiving is certainly something different than this. Those are like quick reflections that came to my mind to your question.
Right. I also find that a lot of time the women also get in the way of men giving care. Very often because of,
Yeah. No, I couldn't hear you. I couldn't hear you.
yeah, I guessed as
My,
much.
ba- my battery is running low, but now it is on. Yeah.
Okay. Now, very often women also get in the way of men giving care because we have also assumed that it is our jobs. And we also assume we are better at it than men would ever be, and that we understand children better because how it has been traditionally. Also, I believe that the way we bring our sons up today will make a
Mm,
huge difference in how many male caregivers we have in future in families. What is your comment on that?
okay. If I could start my comment with the experience, in my experience, when I started working in the field of gender around 2000, etc. तो मैं घर पे मैंने तय किया कि घर पे मेरी खाने की थाली, गांव में मेरे घर की खाने की थाली में उठाऊंगा और जहाँ पे धोते हैं वहां पे रख दूंगा. And then generally my aunt, we are a joint family, so my aunt used to serve food and do all kind of utensils and dishes, etc. So I consciously decided to get my thali to the we don't certainly we don't have the wash basin out there in village, but जहाँ पे धोते हैं वहां पे जाके रखना है. तो मैंने मेरी थाली उठाई और मैंने जाके वहां पे रख दी. और फिर मैं चला गया and I thought, look what great job I did. And then evening, my sister-in-law asked me, what happened between you and we used to call her Tai. And I said, nothing, it didn't happen. And then she said that she started crying, saying that looks like Anand is upset with me because उसने अपनी खुद की थाली उठाई और वहां पे रख दी, तो मैंने शायद कुछ गलत किया हुआ है. So you know that basically you are so, you have, even women are not from Venus, no, they are also socialized here, right here in a patriarchal society where they are taught to be good women, good aunts, good mothers, and that good is been defined by gender. If you perform gender roles assigned by society and culture, if you perform caregiving as your role, automatically you get the good woman kind of tag, saying that, wow, look at that, what kind of mother she is, such a loving mother she is, you know. Whereas one of my woman friend, uh, don't like children at all, you know. And she says that whenever I see a child around me, I just feel like running away from that place. And she always has been blamed as, what kind of woman are you? Being a woman, you don't like children? We have normalized, naturalized it that, women has to be caregivers and nurturers and lovers and, motherland and God knows what. So through language, through poetry, through our literature, through movies, through our say what we say, through Ramayans and through our histories and scripts and we have created that image that mother is caregiver. So whenever you break that stereotype, you yourself start feeling guilty, saying, look, whether I am a bad woman, it is just not about caregiving. It is all about putting bindi, taking pallu, wearing sari, not allowing the cleavage to be exposed, not exposing the skin, so there are like set of norms which are created by gendered society and gendered cultures for women. Any step out of those gendered norms creates feeling of guilt और अपराधी लगने लगता है औरतों को. And that is why the moment men get into caregiving role, the first reaction possibly of women who have not reflected on this idea possibly might start feeling guilty, saying that, oh my God, whether I'm giving it totally or not to this particular job. There is a concept, something called subjugation, and in theory, gender subjugation. There are many other such concepts, but it is more of a subjugation, जिसको हिंदी में या मराठी में भी आधीनता कहते हैं. और आधीनता का मतलब ये होता है कि आधीनता का पूरा, एंड आधीनता इन जनरल इज subjugation in general is not just gendered concept. वो मैं दूसरा उदाहरण पहले बताता हूँ और फिर बाद में जेंडर की तरफ आता हूँ. तो उदाहरण के तौर पे यहाँ की कास्ट सिस्टम भी है, वो आधीनता पे डिपेंड है. अगर रूरल किनशिप में अगर कोई काम करता है, अगर पता है, तो उन्हें पता चलेगा कि ये आधीनता जो है वो कास्ट सिस्टम को बनाए रखती है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, आई वुड से दैट द सबजुगेशन लीड्स टू कंटिन्यूड ऑपरेशन. जाति में भी यही काम करता है. तो आप गांव में देखो कि जो सवर्ण जातियां हैं वो दलित जाति को एक बार साल में सम्मान देगी, मेले में, या कहीं एक सम्मान उनको मिलेगा, या कहेंगे कि नहीं ये पर्टिकुलर जाति का व्यक्ति आएगा तभी खेतों में हमें बुआई शुरू करेंगे. तो ये एक सम्मान की वजह से वो जाति जिंदगी भर दबी रहती है. जाति के लोग मतलब जिंदगी भर दबी रहती है, बिकॉज आई गेट दिस प्रिविलेज. तो आधीनता का मतलब है कि गुलाम के मन में इस तरह का विश्वास निर्माण करो कि ये गुलामी आपके लिए अच्छी है. आई रिपीट, आधीनता, गुलाम के मन में ये विश्वास निर्माण करो कि ये गुलामी तुम्हारे लिए अच्छी है. एंड देन यू गेट रिवॉर्ड. सो देयर इज अ सिस्टम ऑफ पनिशमेंट एंड रिवॉर्ड. अगर आप अधीन रहोगे, सबजुगेटेड रहोगे, देन यू गेट अ रिवॉर्ड. फॉर इंस्टेंस, आपने ये डायलॉग कई बार सुना होगा कि क्या औरतें देखिए, ऐसी औरत मैंने जिंदगी में कभी नहीं देखी, जिंदगी भर पिटती रही, जिंदगी भर पति की गालियां सुनी, लेकिन घर छोड़ के कभी नहीं गई. So that sets example for other women. That sets example for other women. So because she accepted that subjugation, she gets a label of good woman. So मुझे लगता है कि when women say no to men who want to get into caregiving, they basically are trying to even perform their gender role of a good woman. That they need to break that kind of stereotype and subjugation in their minds. And they are trained. They're trained typically. मतलब जो भी जितने भी लोग यहाँ पे आपने इसके हैं सुन रहे हैं या रिबेल हैं, उन्होंने जिंदगी में ये सेंटेंस तो सुना ही होगा, थोड़ा एडजस्ट किया कर, तू लड़की है, थोड़ा एडजस्ट किया कर. And then they learn adjusting things. So, and but by doing that, they get the label of good woman, good mother, good wife. That's a patriarchal celebration. So patriarchy impact not just, I mean, वो मर्दों को प्रिविलेज करती है, औरतों को वो सब्जुगेट करती है, एंड सब्जुगेशन को एक्सेप्ट करी हुई औरतों को ही पैट्रियार्कल प्रिविलेज मिलेगा. एंड दैट्स व्हाई सासू माँ becomes important, because she has accepted subjected position. So patriarchy also privileging her. अगर वो उस सब्जुगेशन को मना करती हैं तो पैट्रियार्की उसको सिस्टम के बाहर निकालेगी, कहेगी गंदी औरत है, इतना सह नहीं सकती. जान तो नहीं ली ना, सिर्फ गाली तो ली. ये भी कहती है औरतें, अब स्लम में आप काम करती है, हमारे स्लम में भी औरतें काम करती है, कहती कि पड़ोस वाली का पति है ना बहुत खराब है, उसको ना बहुत लात मारता है, बहुत लात, मेरा वाला बहुत अच्छा है, सिर्फ गाली देता है. Now you completely internalize that subjugation, right? तो वो चलते रहता है. So मुझे लगता है कि जो सवाल आप कर रही है, that is largely connected with the kind of it is not the given again. It is gender socialization into subjugation, accepting subjugation, celebrating that subjugation, and that is why women do not want their men to work in their homes. It's not to blame women, but it's more to blame to the patriarchal gender socialization. Sure.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, I completely agree with what you're saying, but फिर वो other end of the spectrum भी आज है जहाँ पर rebel without a cause भी हो रहा है. So I think we have to find a middle path where men and women work together in tandem, because I find that adjustment दोनों तरफ से बिल्कुल ही नहीं हो रहा है. So there are cases where husbands and wives are falling out of a relationship because of the brand of toothpaste that the other person prefers. तो वहाँ तक भी बात पहुँच गई है. तो I think एक moderation की ज़रूरत है, especially in the more, like I keep saying, there are two sections of society, as we can very clearly see, where the more educated girls are coming from and are learning to rebel against this patriarchy, but some going too far, I do find, both men and women. Like I said, even the whole Me Too thing that happened on the bus was a little shocking. So एक middle path हमें अगर ढूंढना है, तो I think we will all have to work together with the men to see what works for both genders well. Again, we are coming back to the binary. We have to take all genders into consideration, of course. But since we're talking about parenting a child, so again, it becomes a binary thing of a man and a woman. And we have to see what works for both genders well and together. And this discussion, I think, like you said, has to happen with each couple specifically, because every relationship is different. The dynamics of every relationship is different. And individuals are also coming from very different backgrounds and different kinds of upbringing. Some husbands and wives also come from completely different cultures now. So there is an imbalance there as well. You know, unlike the earlier times where you can assume that if these two are married, then they're typically from similar families with similar backgrounds, and it is not the same anymore. We are mingling a lot more. So there are a lot of more differences now. Thank you so much, Anand.
My pleasure.
First such interviews, and I really hope to engage with you more for conversations like this. Also involving parents, so that you can talk to them directly if you are willing and free. That is. Thank you very much for your
time. Sure.
And
my
thanks
pleasure.
to Aparna Modak for sharing your number, and of course again to everybody who's watching this interview on Facebook. There'll be more people, of course, watching it later because it gets recorded there. Thank you for your time, Anand, and have a wonderful.
Thank you to you and Ekang's Trust and Aparna and all the viewers over here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.